Hey everybody, welcome to Slash Bash, where today I am bringing you another Choosing Beggar Reddit video. If you are new to the channel, then subscribe and click on notifications so you don't miss out on the fun. In our first story, we have a Choosing Beggar roommate who is kicked out after being behind in rent. When he comes back 3 years later looking like a homeless person, our OP wants to help him out. How do you think this is going to turn out? Probably pretty good. Let's jump right in. Here's some backstory. I was renting my living room to a Choosing Beggar 3 years ago, and I ended up kicking him out because he was 3 months behind, and he was super messy. He would leave his trash and clothes scattered around the house. We did, however, bond a few times while playing video games, so he came around once or twice a year to play a few games when he was in town. This is what happened when he came around 2 weeks ago. He shows up with a trash bag over his shoulder, and I figured he's probably homeless. He tells me he just came from Chicago and that he's been living on the streets for a few months now and wanted to see if I can let him stay with me. At this time, my living room is basically a storage unit and I have no space for him at all, but I feel bad because it was pouring rain, so I told him to stay in my truck while it rains. It's my old work truck that needs some work done and I don't have a use for it for the moment. It's a 2000 Ford Explorer, so there's room for him to lay down. He asks me to give him some money for food, but since this coronavirus lockdown, I've been out of work for 3 months. I am conserving every penny since I didn't have any savings, so instead I give him a large full loaf of bread and a family-sized jar of peanut butter that I had just bought for me and my girl. He doesn't look too pleased. He then asks me to give him a ride to Wendy's so he can get drive-through, but when we get there, he realized he forgot his wallet, so I paid for it and told him it was my treat. It was under $10, so I didn't mind. The next day, I get up and go check up on him and bring him some water, but instead he asks me for money so he can get an energy drink. I told him that I don't have money to be giving out, but I did have a few dollars if he wanted to help out a bit around the house, and I could pay him. He agreed. I asked him to pull the weeds out of a very small patch of flowers in my front yard, and I would give him $5 when he was finished, and I went inside. I came back to check on him 2 hours later, but he hadn't done the work. He had pulled maybe 1 or 2 handfuls of weeds and given up. P.S. When I pulled those weeds yesterday, it took 10 minutes. Nothing hard about it at all. When I went to talk to him in my truck, he said he got dizzy and couldn't do it, but he still wanted the money. But I said no, and he got pissed. He turned to walk away and get in my truck. I then noticed a cloud of smoke coming out of my truck and was overcome by the smell of weed. I yelled at him about smoking weed in my truck because that smell gets into the fabric and because I used to smoke a lot of weed and it took me a really long time to break the habit, and I go out of my way to not be in that environment, and he knew that. He gets annoyed that he can't smoke in my truck or on my property, but agrees. I then asked him how he has money for weed but not for food, and he says weed is more important. As a former addict, I understood, but I was not about to be flipping the bill for his habit. Later that day, my girl had a great idea. Her mom has a friend that occasionally rents out one of his rooms in exchange for work around the house because he's old and retired. We told Choosing Beggar about it and he was super excited. We told him we had to talk to the guy and make the arrangements, but it would take a few days, if it was available. 2 days later, at 2:30 a.m., me and my girl get woken up by loud banging at the door. It was Choosing Beggar. He's shouting my name and wants me to go out and talk to him. At this point, I've had just about enough of him, and I'm starting to get pissed. I told him that it was 2:30 in the morning and to flip off. His response was, "You said you guys stay up late." Again, I tell him to flip off and I go back to bed. The next morning, me and my girl are still pissed, but then she gets a call from the guy about the room and it turns out it is available, but he has a strict no drugs rule. We thank him and tell him we'll get back to him. We head outside to talk to Choosing Beggar about it and share the good news, but he's already irate. First thing he does is yell at us for leading him on and lying about the room. Me and my girl look at each other in amazement. I calmed him down and I told him the good news. He has a place to stay in a very nice neighborhood in a nice house with a nice guy, but he has a rule about no smoking weed or any drugs. At first, he smirks ear to ear. I know that look. He was planning on smoking anyway and not telling anyone. He then says he totally agrees and would quit right away, and that he wants to move in immediately. I didn't believe he was going to quit smoking, so I made up that he had to do a drug test every 2 weeks, and that's when the stuff hit the fan. He gets out of my truck and begins shouting that I'm a piece of stuff and my girl is a witch and the guy with the room is this and that. I signal to my girl to go inside and I proceed to grab all of his stuff from inside my truck and hand it to him and tell him to get out and not come back. He instantly goes silent and begins to apologize and says it's all good and we're all cool. I tell him we are not cool and he has to leave my property. He then starts shouting at me again that he is Jesus Christ and he is in control and everything is cool, and I have to do what he says because he is Jesus. At that point, I realized he needed professional help, and I pulled out my phone to call the cops so they can get him mentally evaluated. But as soon as I dialed and he realized it was the cops, he ran down the street. So here's an update. He's come back twice asking for food money, and each time I point him to a church just down the street that feeds the homeless every day. And he gets mad that I don't give him money. I told him that the next time I see him on my property, I would call the cops. In story number 2, we see that even in business-to-business transactions, we still have choosing beggars. I quit my job in HR recruiting and marketing last summer. Low unemployment, opioid crisis, and corporate offices playing by the rules to a fault contributed to me being burned out. One of the businesses we supplied workers to was a seasonal fireworks distributor just over my state's border. This is a family-owned small business hiring local laborers, but my first red flag was that they've been operating for years under some gray area of the law, supposedly selling to out-of-state buyers. My boss was the one who agreed to doing business with them. The fireworks company paid us something like $16 to $17 per hour per laborer. Of that money, the laborers were paid $11.50 per hour, the lowest pay rate out of everyone we serviced in the area. While they agreed to no background check and no drug testing, it would have cost the fireworks company extra. Whenever we'd prepared to send someone over, they'd asked if the candidate was vetted. Those gray area mother flippers were asking about background and drug checks without having to pay for it. At first, I was sending them anyone who could get to work reliably. The turnover rate was ridiculous. One employee said something about getting out of prison recently, another had "boss bitch" tattooed on her hands, another guy admitted to being on methadone, and the fireworks company gave all of them the boot when they'd hear or see something they didn't like. Despite these seemingly small things, those were perfectly good employees, reliable attendance, fulfilled work duties, etc. The fireworks company also tried reaching out to other staffing companies in the area behind our back, and either couldn't provide laborers or refused to work with them because they wanted vetted candidates without paying extra. For a seasonal job that paid low compared to other businesses we worked with, I felt it was not worth it, but my boss disagreed because we needed it to stay in operations. I hopped out of there shortly after the July 4th weekend, the fireworks company's biggest event. Just wanted to share that businesses can be full of choosing beggars too. In our final story, we have a self-reporting choosing beggar who has some problems with his free HBO. I'm stuck in quarantine like everyone else, and I'm catching up on my I'll watch that someday shows. Finished streaming Breaking Bad about the time I heard HBO was offering select titles for free. I've been ripping through Sopranos today, and I'm super annoyed that if I close the app, it doesn't track what episode I was watching and where I am on the episode. I tried signing in or creating an account, but since I'm using it for free, I can't set up an account. I started Googling solutions and couldn't find anything. I decided to check the HBO sub here, didn't find anything. The whole time, I'm getting more and more heated, peed off. I'm about to post a question or rant in the HBO sub asking if anyone found a workaround when I realized I'm being a real choosing beggar. HBO's service is free, and I'm here complaining about Game of Thrones not being on there and the app not having as much functionality for me as I'd like. So there, I'm here to report myself. Let me have it. This has been John from Slash Bash. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more of them, then please hit that subscribe button. We'd love for you to drop a like, share it with your friends, and we will see you in the next one.